It's 4:01 on October 7th. Meeting is called to order, and I believe that Jennifer has probably already taken the attendance. Is that right?
Actually, that's Melissa. I am.
Oh, very good. Okay, Melissa. All right, so is there any public comment, Ray?
We don't.
Don't have any. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the consent agenda, and there are 3 items here, but we only require one motion to pass all 3 unless someone wants to pull any of these 3 out for further discussion. One is the minutes of the September 27th, 2020 meeting. The other is the financial reports. The recommendation is that those reports be received and filed. And the McLean County Regional Planning Commission staff report recommend that those reports be received and filed. Is there a motion, or does anyone want discussion on any of those items?
I would move.
So moved, Mark Wiley.
Okay. Would you
Second,
like to
Pearl.
second, Carl? Thank
Yep.
you. Okay. So all in favor, please raise your hand, the voting members. Okay, we unanimously passed that. Let's go on to the regular agenda. There were no items removed, item A. Item B is approval of the FY 2021 overall work program. So Ray, I'm going to ask you to describe this.
Okay, thank you very much. And some of you, those who are on the executive committee, this all looks so familiar. But for the rest of the commission and the executive committee of the commission did entertain, considered, and recommend approval last week of this, what we call OWP, the overall work program for FY 2021. What it basically is our work program, is our budget for the next fiscal year that coincide with the counties. And our budget, the overall is a little over 1 million. And
This
I have
conference will now be recorded.
I have a few slides, just really overview of the budget. If Melissa can help me, and then I'll just go over some of the slides. And so next, please. This fiscal year 2021 budget, excuse me, talking would trigger some cough for me, so if you would bear with me. It's our funding sources are primarily from the local, from state, and also the federal sources. And what we do, and many of you who have been on the commission for a while, you seen the formats, and so it might not be something new to you. If you just joined maybe last year too, it's still somewhat similar. And then the funding sources that we receive, we assign those into different work elements. And since our relationship with IDOT, and majority of our funding is either from IDOT or through IDOT, there are 5 work elements that are funded through our annual agreement, what we call the Unified Work Program. And as you recall, just a few months ago, last June, that we did bring it to your attention for your information, the UWP. And what that was is a program that with like 5 different elements, from 100, 300, 400, 500, and 600. And so what it is it covers all the activities, especially related to transportation planning, since we are a metropolitan planning organization, MPO, for our Bloomington Normal urbanized area. And so we have cut the bulk of that funding with IDOT on those elements. And there are 2 other elements. We also get federal funding, but through IDOT, and they are under separate agreements. And those are not part of the UWP, but part of this OWP. And also included in the work elements are 200 and 210. They are locally funded, and especially for 210 is CDBG funded, related to housing, regional housing issues that we work on. And so you see the term OWP, UWP. It could be confusing. I'm learning too, just for the last few months, the UWP versus OWP and how they apply to our work program. Next slide, please. The next pie chart shows just kind of an overview of the three main sources of funding from the Fed, the state, and also the local, and the percentage is kind of looking for the cover, the blue area, the yellowish area, also the green area, because separate into the different funding sources. Next slide, please.
This is also in your packets.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Yeah, that we include in your packet for your convenience. This next slide is chart 2.1 is not only we make extra copy for you, but also it's on chart 2.1 of the OWP. And what it is, it breaks further down on the different funding sources in the percentage and give you a good overview. And the overall budget is $1.205871. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. This may be hard to read on the screen, but you also have that in your packet. And what we attempt to do is to give you really a snapshot overview. The top part are the expenditures for the salary and also the line expenditures. And then the bottom section is for the revenue. So you have a easier to read kind of synopsis in terms of what funding sources we receive and how we spend the money in different work elements. And they, at the end of the day, it balance. I think that's all right. No more slides. And so that gives you kind of an overview of the OWP. And the process works like this. After the meeting today, if you were to approve this, and then we will take this to the county board and first through the executive committee, and then for the approval. And we know there's some discussion in the past whether we need to take it to the county board, but for now, at least for this year, I think we will. So any questions that I'll be happy to answer.
Ray, this is Mark.
And Mark.
On table 2.2 under line item budget, I think there might be a typo, and I'm not trying to be too critical.
Oh, that's good. So 2.2.
Under the fourth line up from the bottom, software license agreement. This is on page, I think, 19.
19, okay.
I just noticed this. I should have let you know before. Under software license agreement, at least what I'm reading $425,009.
Oh, I see.
You've got an extra zero in there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Good eyes.
Good
Yes.
eyes.
At first, I looked at that and I said, "We're paying $400,000 for software? Wow."
Yeah, good eyes.
Any other
So
comments?
it's 42,000. Is that right? 42,509 or something?
I think
Is
that's
that right?
Yeah, that's much.
Oh.
That sounds about right. I'll double check.
Okay.
I believe that's what it is without the extra zero.
Makes far more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Ray, this is Carl.
Hi.
Hi, on page 34, under task 304, environmental planning,
Okay.
it says partner with the Environmental Action Center. Do you mean the Ecology Action Center on that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll update that. Yes.
Yep. Okay,
Thank you.
good.
And by the way, I as you all know that I'm still relatively new. This work program, the OWP, is really a joint effort for all the staff. I just want to give, I didn't do all this. I would just want to give credit, to my staff, who, we kind of work together as a team and look at this, because there's a lot of things that they didn't know from the past, and then also trying to learn and how to make this a meaningful document.
Well, this is the first time we've gotten such a nice large chart. It's easy to read, so I want to compliment you on that.
Thank you, Mary.
All right, any more discussion?
I would move to approve.
Okay, is there a second to that? Carl moved to approve.
I'll second that.
Jim seconded. Okay, all in favor, please say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have a unanimous vote here. Okay. Okay, under regular agenda, then we'll move to item C, which is authorization to execute a contract by the McLean County Planning Commission chairperson for consulting services regarding wireless infrastructure, 5G, I believe. So, all right, I think we go back to Ray again to explain, and we have a
Yes.
visit to help us out also.
Yes, yes. So this is kind of a unique type project in different ways. One is it's a regional collaborative project between the town of Normal and city of Bloomington. And because the area as a whole, and even with the county, we've seen permits, small cells, and you've seen advertisements for getting ready for 5G. It's coming, it's here. So it's what it's all about. It's when the 5G is small cells, small equipment to be installed on maybe traffic lights, other poles within right-of-ways, and sometimes on private properties. So with that, the city and town, they are interested in proactively prepare themselves to have somebody, a consultant, to review the regulations, the current regulations, and come up with also recommendations in terms of how, what kind of aesthetics, what kind of regulations should be imposed when they, receive more of those applications from the service providers. And so that's kind of the impetus for this project. And since this is a regional significant type project, and we, excuse me, in the past, as commission members may recall, every year we try to identify one or two projects depending on the scale of those projects or regional significance or regional impact that we would have to fund those projects, and we typically would set aside money. Sometimes we did not know the types of project in the beginning of the budget year. Sometimes we do. And so we do have money from 2020, the fiscal year 2020, that we set aside, but before we did not know what project, but now we do as a potential project, and which is this wireless infrastructures, people call it 5G type project. So there was an RFP process that the town and Bloomington and I was involved in kind of, soliciting interest and responses from consultants, and we received 4 responses, and then we went through a process for interview, and eventually it was highly recommended. The consultants called CTC, Columbia Telecommunication Corporation, Southie, Maryland, and then they have done lots of work all over the country for different communities, especially for the public sector, the governmental entities. And so we feel comfortable in recommending this consultant, and then it will be funded by this budget item in our FY 2020 OWP. And so the CEO of the CDC, the consultant, Andrew Elflerbach, is available on the phone. And also, since it's a joint local regional project, Billy Tyers, the deputy city manager of Bloomington, and also Vasu, you all know her from town of Normal, also standing by in case of questions that you may have for them. And
Great.
by the way,
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, I just want to point out, and you have read it in your material, the amount of money we're talking about is $90,000.
Oh, Ray, I was looking at the contract, and I had a question as to who we worked with to develop this detailed contract.
Okay. Actually, it was drafted initially by the town of Normal, their legal counsel, and then it routed through for review by Bloomington legal counsel as well as the county legal counsel.
Okay.
And so the appendix, actually, as you recognize, the appendix actually was the response submitted by the consultant. And since a lot of the work scope already spelled out in that, and so it was part of reference as part of the appendix for the contract.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments on the overall project? Okay, Vasu, could I ask you, you're in charge of innovation in the town of Normal. So how do you see this project as laying the groundwork for your planning?
Oh, absolutely. So what this project is aiming at, Mary, is, FCC passed regulation back in 2019 limiting what local governments can and cannot control when it comes to regulating wireless infrastructure. It's a big it's a setback for municipalities who would want to work with wireless service providers to make sure they're rolled out in communities in a fashion that's consistent with local plans, local ordinances, and also with our placemaking efforts. So with all of that kind of taken away, for the most part, preempted from our local regulations, we are now faced with a way to work with them more collaboratively rather than regulating them. So this is a area where Bloomington and Town of Normal want to make sure that we establish guidelines for where we would like for them to be, and really essentially find ways to partner with wireless providers to see if we can get them to comply, not by regulating them, but by making sure that we are clear in our expectations of what we want from them. So I just want to throw that out there. The second thing is this really is, wireless infrastructure is going to be rolled out fast. And this really provides the foundation for a lot of things that are coming down the pike. Actually not coming down the pike that are here now, like say a lot of Internet of Things, which is, you know, your cameras, your sensors, all that information is the data that's gathered there will be communicated wirelessly going forward. There is also a ton of, as part of connected and autonomous vehicle rollout, connected vehicles depend on communications, not just, you know, they have their own radio communications, but wireless communications and 5G is going to play an important role. So how does this lay a foundation? The private sector is really rolling these out fast because they see a huge market need. We are just trying to make sure that that is being rolled out in a fashion that's compatible with our plans that we already adopted, and also in a way that we can partner with them to take advantage of this infrastructure that's being rolled out instead of fighting a losing battle.
Billy, would you like to make a comment about Bloomington's interest in this project, or any type of comment? It's okay if you don't.
I would say ditto. Is that sufficient? No. And I agree with Vasu. One of the things that has occurred is that a lot of the regulation of this industry is at the state level, state and federal level, and so we thought that it made sense for us as neighboring communities and the county as well, regionally, to look at, are there ways that we can establish guidelines for how this is implemented as best we can within the rules that are dictated by the state. And so that becomes the basis for this. You know, we're already starting to see some of this infrastructure appear in our communities. I think at the time of this RFP, we had like 35 of the poles, and the town of Normal had like 15. So it was already happening. So we want to look at how can we guide this as it starts to occur. When you look at situations where our cell phones and our technology is ubiquitous, it's like we use it all the time. I mean, it's only going to continue to progress in terms of how we're using this technology. So we want to make sure that as the technology comes here, we are working to guide it as best we can. And also, Vasu mentioned the possibility for partnerships. And so this industry it's going to be lucrative for some of these providers. And so there are going to be times when they need our communities to be able to do the things that they want to do. So how do we work with them to determine what partnerships might exist so that we can grow our technological infrastructure in a way that it's positioning us to where we want to be down the road. And so the other thing I would add is that this is truly a regional effort, in that, and I've said it all the time, our people don't stop at our borders. And so it makes sense for us to work together on guidelines that don't stop at each of our borders, so that people going to and from our communities are governed by the same types of rules and regulations. And so we're excited about this. We really are.
Okay, and does anyone have a question for any of our guests here?
Mary, I don't have a question, but I would like to say that I give kudos to both Bloomington and Normal for getting ahead of the curve on this issue. As Billy has mentioned, and so has Vasu, these towers are starting to pop up now, and to get ahead of the curve and help direct development in our community, I think is vital. So I give them a lot of credit for not waiting until there are issues that get developed, but rather that they get ahead of the curve and help to guide how this is going to occur in our communities.
Well, one question that I have, because I represent the rural part of the planning committee, the area, are rural areas included in this 5G plan? And I believe they are. Am I wrong, Ray?
I'll make a few comments, and then I'll let Vasu and also Billy to add anything. Since most of those small cell equipments more in the urban area, from all the permits that we have seen, because the small cells is relying on a shorter distance than what we're used to seeing those high towers and whatnot. So actually they prefer to locate those in more urbanized, more densely populated areas. So for the rural areas, it's not as much. And for Sue and Billy, please chime in too.
And I would agree with you, Ray. And typically, a lot of small cell concentration is in higher density areas where they cannot get the signal out as fast and to as many places and locations. And I would also want Andrew to comment on this, which is why communities like us are not seeing this overpopulation of the newest cells like 5G as much as Chicago's or some of the other much denser metropolitans. So it's starting out as an urban issue. I'm not saying it's going to stop as an urban issue. Andrew, do you want to add anything to it?
Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me today and for looking to bring us on board. What I guess I'd say about that is yeah, it's correct that the small cells they're basically shorter range. They're designed to fill in a congested area, in an area where there are a lot of people potentially looking to get online and connect, and so in a rural area, the solution is more like a tall tower. You want to think about basically whether it's a tall tower or a small cell. It serves roughly the same amount of people, and you'd want to spread out over a larger area what you're putting up if it's rural. There's another part of our study which is not just the wireless portion, but also relating to the fiber optics that the town of Normal and the city of Bloomington have deployed, and also looking at what's called a dig once policy, so that if one of these providers, such as the ones who are building the small cells, are building also cabling, because you do have to generally connect these small cells with fiber optics, then there should be opportunities that the town and the city use to, and the rest of the county for that matter, to take advantage of that to build other infrastructure at the same time, or to work with the provider to put in capacity that can be used, on a more open sort of basis later on. And so again, our task is not just around the small cells, but it's also around fiber optics, and I think that would also be more relevant for the rural communities.
Do you have a comment, Mark?
I have another question. First comment, I do agree. I think this is a great thing. And my question has to go with the fee. As several of you know, in my past life, I was a consulting engineer, and a lot of times when we did work like this, we had to do it on a time and material basis, not to exceed. And maybe the city and the town have changed their philosophy on that since I've retired. Is there a reason why we didn't go that? Because it's obviously, I didn't know if that had been thought about, or maybe it's already been discussed.
So Mark, I can actually take a crack at it. The way the RFP was published is to provide cost proposal based on task and deliverables, and that's what the consultants provided. And I believe that's based on their time and material for that particular task and deliverables.
And I would just say that's correct.
But it's a lump sum.
We did an estimate.
But it's a lump sum, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So are there protections built in if a task isn't performed?
Yes.
If it's a lump sum. Okay, Ray?
The way that it's actually for.
Andrew?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, Vasu. No, it's broken into 4 sums actually that are all task-based. So there are 2 tasks that you see in there, 1 and 2. 20,000 goes to the task 1. The 2 is 70,000, and then within task 2 there are 3 milestones. So that the 70 is broken into 3 parts, and so we're not allowed to to bill for our work until we complete those milestones.
Okay. Any other comments, Mark?
No,
Question?
again, I think it's a great idea, but
Okay. All right. Well, I think it's a great idea too. So I'm glad we're getting on board, and I'm glad to see that there were 4 responses to the request for proposal. It's a lot better than only having 1, so that's wonderful. So we look forward to working with you, Andrew, if we approve this contract. So first, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve this project and the contract. Let me make sure I've worded that right. We're asking for a motion for authorization to execute this contract. So do I have a motion to that effect?
Sure, I'd make that motion.
I'll second. Carl?
Okay. Do we have enough specifics on that motion, Ray, or should we word that more
Yeah,
specific?
as you read, and I assume that you meant, the rest is basically to authorize authorization to execute a contract by you, meaning for as the chair of the Regional Planning Commission to execute the contract. That's of course assuming the contract is okay.
Yes. Okay, that's the motion. Okay, second, is there a second to that motion?
Yeah, I seconded the motion, Mary. Carl?
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Any nays? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Andrew, for being available for us. And Vasu and Billy, thank you very much for your explanations, and that was very helpful. Really appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much to all of you for approving this.
Okay,
Absolutely.
It's
Same
a,
here.
it's a
Thank
big
you, and
step.
I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
thank you, Andrew. You take care. Thank you. All
Bye-bye.
right, we'll move on to the next item, which is number 6, the Regional Housing Initiative, CDBG Housing Assistance Update, and I call on Lauren Gibson to give us that information.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just kind of go over briefly the report that I gave you. So the Housing Assistance Coalition has been extremely busy over these last 4 months or so, really kicking into high gear and making sure we're meeting the needs of our local residents who have been affected by COVID and are having issues paying their rent, mortgage, and utilities. So as of the end of August, over $1 million in local assistance has been given out. So I think, it's a good thing in one way that, we're able to meet those needs, but also it's kind of a sobering fact that, that much assistance is needed in our community. So we're continuing to monitor that, continuing to build on our partnerships locally and get more churches and different organizations involved as we kind of struggle through some of the issues that we're encountering and making sure that, there are no gaps that are left unfilled. So I previously talked about that the state mortgage and rental assistance. So those are closed and they are fulfilling those requests right now. I don't know how much is going towards McLean County or towards households. Hopefully I will hear back from IDA soon and see what kind of that number is. There's some good news on the eviction front. The statewide eviction moratorium was extended until October 17th. I'm not sure if it's going to be extended again. I believe this was the 3rd or 4th time it was extended. So it wouldn't surprise me if it is, but again, we won't know probably for another few days or so. There's also a new federal eviction moratorium, and that goes through December 31st. So while our state moratorium is in effect, that's the one that takes precedence because it's the more restrictive of the two. So when the state one expires and the federal one kicks in, their tenants shouldn't be evicted again for non-payment of rent, but they cannot be evicted for other things such as, you know, causing damage to property or causing a threat to the lives of those around them, something like that. So one thing to note with this is there is a declaration from the CDC with a list of things that a tenant has to, under, you know, oath, say that, yes, I attest to these things. And, you know, one of them being I have sought local assistance. And so that's kind of one thing we're looking at, is trying to have people be aware that, you know, this assistance is available locally. Please, you know, try to obtain it before you could potentially be facing eviction. Another moratorium that was recently announced is a utilities moratorium, or shut-off moratorium. So this doesn't affect all of the utilities. It's just the ICC. So that's Illinois Commerce Commission regulated. So Ameren and NICOR locally would be included in that. And that's really good news that they extended it till March 31st of 2021. So that kind of will get people through, you know, the winter period without shutoffs. But again, it doesn't cover all of the utilities. And just the same thing with, you know, the eviction moratoriums, is that doesn't, you know, preclude people from having to pay rent or having to pay late fees. So I think one of our biggest worries is that whenever these eviction moratoriums end, that people are going to have, you know, a backlog of unpaid rent, and we're going to face waves of eviction. So we don't know what's going to happen. We're really trying to get the word out that these assistance programs are available, and trying to meet, you know, every need that we can. Some good news, the city of Bloomington and Town and Normal are getting new CDBG coronavirus allocations. It's, you know, not decided what's going to be specifically done with that yet, but they did put some of their previous allocations towards housing assistance. Next up, we did hold the Illinois Housing Blueprint Tour listening session on the 22nd. There was about 20 people in attendance. And so, like I said in my report, a lot of the issues that we talked about are things that we've identified before. And I think, you know, one thing that kept coming up was a lack of permanent supportive housing. And we learned through our state housing partners that this is something that has come up at every listening session across the state. So, you know, we know it's not just a McLean County issue. We know it's a statewide issue. So, and I think there are things on the statewide level that we're looking at. I know this Supportive Housing Providers Association for Illinois is advocating for additional funding for supportive housing. So hopefully, you know, I'll keep up to date with what's going on with that, but we do know that that's, you know, one big housing issue we're facing. So moving on to our technical assistance portion of the housing, we did provide technical assistance and a letter of support, if you'll recall from last month, to the City of Bloomington's application to the Healthy Housing and Lead Abatement Grant offered by HUD. And they did receive that grant, total about $2.3 million. So we're really excited about that. That's really going to address some of those issues that we know are occurring specifically in that 61701 area code, where Bloomington's housing stock is the oldest and has the highest risk of, you know, lead and other home hazard issues. So, you know, that's just starting to get carried out. There's partnerships forming with that. We'll still be a part to offer, you know, some technical and planning assistance with that. But again, you know, this is something I'm really happy about, because we've been talking about this. We've been identifying this as an issue, you know, from the get-go. So we're really happy that it's kind of being fulfilled partially in this way. Continuing on, I did announce last month that we received the APA Illinois Community Outreach Award for the Bloomington Normal Consolidated Plans. So last month we recorded an interview with the awards chair, and that was shown at the virtual awards ceremony. So participating in that with me were Jennifer Toney from the city and Taylor Long from the town. And then we also did Mercy Davidson, who's on the call, or she was, yeah, she is. And then Jennifer Toney and I, we also did a speed planning session during the, hi Mercy, during the conference, where we kind of went into more depth about, the process, the planning process, and our, kind of our thoughts behind our outreach methods. So I think we received some really good feedback on it. So I'm, again, really excited and thankful for everyone's help. I know last summer was crazy with outreach for me, and I know, so everyone who helped kind of promote that, thank you so much. Finally, we're always doing research to kind of further along those issues that we've identified. So we did publish the 2020 update to the income qualified housing in McLean County type of units and vouchers white paper. So if you'll recall from last year, that's where we really took an in-depth look at kind of our stock of income qualified housing. So that's your low-income housing tax credit properties, project-based rental assistance, your USDA Rural 515 properties, as well as your Bloomington Housing Authority properties. So we're looking at kind of what that stock is and comparing that to, okay, what's the population in McLean County that would be, that would fit into those income categories to have this housing, and what's the gap? So just quick comment on that. We did notice that this year there was a decrease in the number of units, specifically LIHTC. That's because we did not know that there was a LIHTC project that actually ended their contract early and got out of the program. So that kind of took 100 units away. But good news for the upcoming year, as we've got quite a few coming on board. So the senior apartments on Washington, I think are leasing right now. And then if you saw in the, I believe there was a Pantagraph article yesterday about the Lincoln Lofts project, which is down by Four Seasons in Bloomington, and that's going to be, I believe, a 56 unit LIHTC project. So I think these numbers will be a little bit different next year. I'm excited that we're getting more affordable housing stock in our community, which is something we know we need. So yeah, that's about it. Any questions on housing?
I have a question. I was wondering if any studies have been done on the impact of small businesses who own properties, or individuals who may only own a few properties and are caught, have tenants who have lost jobs and can't afford to pay rent, and these rents are frozen. Have we done any studies on potential foreclosure activity on these individuals who own rental properties?
Yeah, so right now there is, and I can't even remember the correct term, for mortgage forbearance. So for small landlords right now, they are able to put off their mortgage payments. I don't know how long that's going to extend for, and if that's, every single mortgage provider, but right now that is in place. We haven't done any specific studies. I know kind of at the onset, maybe about a month or two into the kind of the pandemic and the shutdown, we did kind of do a overall survey of landlords. We actually worked with the town of Normal and the city of Bloomington to do that. And at that point, there wasn't a lot of rent non-payment. And we're gearing up to kind of do something similar again, just to kind of see, what that issue what, the scale of that is, the scale of that non-payment. So hopefully we'll find out more. There's been some kind of nationwide studies, and it really differs, by region, but I think that, it could be an issue, and that's why we're really trying to get the word out to people that, hey, there is this assistance available,
Alright.
for rental, so that, landlords aren't in that position where they're, not having enough money to keep up with their mortgage payments or to make the needed repairs to their property.
Okay, Lauren, are there any questions of Lauren? All right, if not, let's move on to the census, and I'll call on Alyssa for that.
Thanks, Mary.
Uh-huh.
So as you know, we've been very, very busy. Staff has been busy, and our Complete Count Committee has been busy doing continued census education and outreach and grant reporting and all those things. And I do have a really exciting update for you all, and that is that not only have we reached our 2010 response rates, but we have surpassed them as of October 5th. So we reached our 2010 rates on September 30th, and we've now surpassed them as of October 5th. So anything from now on is, exceeding our original goal. Our original goal was to at least meet our 2010 rates as a baseline for how we performed 10 years ago. And, the self-response rates are really important because the Census Bureau and other studies have shown that data that coming from self-response rates is more accurate and robust than all the other ways that people can be enumerated, whether it's at events or door-to-door using a proxy for a neighbor. So the self-response rate is really important because it's the most efficient way to get the data and the most accurate. So I'm just thrilled that we have not only reached but surpassed our 2010 rates, given all the uncertainties that 2020 has brought us with the pandemic and all that, and having to cancel several events right in the thick of that. So I'm really excited to give you that update. As far as the timeline for when the census is supposed to end, I can say with some confidence that the date is now October 31st. The last 2 weeks have been kind of a whirlwind as it relates to the census timeline. Originally the extension date because of the pandemic was October 31st, then it got pushed back to September 30th, then it got pushed back to October 31st, and then last week the date was October 5th, and then there were some court hearings over that, and now we're back to October 31st. So, and so there have been 3 timeline changes within just the last week. It sounds like this court hearing put some finality on that it will be October 31st, which is a good thing overall. That's a great thing because there are still areas of the country that are below their targeted thresholds. So we will be working on continued outreach throughout October. Unfortunately, the grant that we got doesn't fund outreach activities in October, so I'll mostly be spending October doing closeout reporting and supporting other members of the CCC as they continue to do outreach. We'll kind of be phasing it out throughout the month, but there have been several events already. And then as far as when the actual data release comes, that's still set to be, well, data release to the president, that is, not to the public, but to the president, with respect to using the data to redraw congressional districts and things. That's still set for December 31st, but it sounds like there are going to be some court hearings over that. And so I anticipate that date will probably change as well. So I can keep you all updated as that happens, but it'll probably be a few more weeks at least before we hear anything. And in September, we had some really successful events. We did the St. Vincent de Paul Food Pantry 3 times, and we got, I believe it was around 150 people enumerated at that event over the 3 weeks at that event. We also tabled an event at the Scott Early Learning Center where parents could come and register to vote, fill out the census, and or register their child for the Early Learning Center. And then we did Bloomington Public Library 3 times with an enumerator, and then, you know, just continuous disbursements of swag and materials to various community members across the county. And then of course our region-wide marketing consultant is still in full force, and Tri-County, who manages their contract, has extended the contract throughout October 31st. So there will still be ads and things going on as well. So just a mini recap. I assume I'll probably give you a more full recap at some point, because I'm kind of writing a report of all the things the CCC did. But just a little snippet of that. We have done 78 outreach events in spite of COVID happening and basically doing the entire census during a pandemic. We've still been able to pull off 78 events with more than 39,000 attendees. We have dispersed nearly 30,000 flyers, posters, and signs, and we've dispersed nearly 11,000 freebie items like the reusable bags and stuff that have been really helpful with engagement at events and things. We've placed over 350 yard signs throughout the county, and regional planning has posted 57 times on our Facebook page about the census, plus the dozens, if not hundreds more from the other CCC members. And then we've done several newsletter blurbs and newsletters that have gone out to at least 76,000 subscribers, probably more than that. I just don't have the numbers on every single one of those, but the ones I do have numbers on, that reached 76,000 subscribers. So that is my update. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, those are pretty impressive stats. And thank you so much for your presentation. Are there any questions? It's wonderful what you've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, as you all know, there have been a lot of uncertainties with 2020. So I'm really happy with the way this is unfolding. I'm hoping, you know, with the extra few weeks we're getting, we can boost that our self-response numbers even more. Most of our region has pretty much been entirely counted, but I know there are still some people out there, because there always is. So, and I keep seeing our numbers increase every few days. So I'm hoping that these extra few weeks get us a few more people counted in the self-response tracker. And just as a reminder, again, both ISU and Wesleyan submitted their counts for on and off-campus students. So they have all been counted, but they're not part of those self-response numbers because they didn't self-respond per se. But yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to your final report, Alyssa. Thank you so much for that report. So we'll move on now to the item C, Vision Zero Transportation Safety Project Update. So Jennifer, I'll call on you for that.
Thank you, Mary. We're at an interesting sort of inflection point with this project. As you know, we started out earlier this year with a project study group, a number of people who volunteered to participate, and also a group of what we call, somewhat oddly, subject matter experts, which include local staff from, you know, around the various local governments, as well as others. That group has now been divided into 3 focus groups, and each of those has a different topic to consider. One is infrastructure, which is pretty obvious in these circumstances, and it's the people you would assume from the subject matter experts and from the committee. Another is data technology and research, which is looking at the implications of having, you know, mass data available and using it to investigate and analyze the kind of incidents we have and are trying to prevent here in McLean County. And finally, and this is the most of Vision Zero of the Vision Zero groups, community culture change. And the idea here is that part of the way to make this successful, a huge part of the way to make this successful, is to have a process in place to help people understand the point of this approach and to recognize that it is possible to reach a point where the use of these techniques means we can significantly reduce or eliminate the occasion of either death or serious injury, either being on the roadway in a vehicle or crossing it as a pedestrian, or, you know, more of the same. So those are the three groups that are currently working. They had an initial meeting, which Ray and I were also able to participate in at the end of September, and kind of got their marching orders. And the Heil group has put together a series of sort of packets of tasks for each of the groups. Some of them are, have the same information at the outset, but then they branch out into different kinds of information. The idea being that as they meet and discuss over the next probably 3 weeks or so, we hope to wrap this up by the end of October, that they will be able to put the pieces together from each of those groups and have an overall approach to not only the individual topics they're looking at, but the overall concept of a Vision Zero action plan, and most specifically implementation of the kinds of things that we're going to prioritize here. That will be sort of the next month. It's already the 7th, but basically this month is kind of the focus for that. And then that will be the first stage in actually preparing a report and then adding to it and making sure that everyone is comfortable with the way all of those ideas mesh. I sort of think of it like, each group has a set of pieces from a mosaic, and as they work out their own set of designs and then they integrate them together, that's going to be the sort of final image and direction of this project as we bring it into our planning process and into implementation of plans here in McLean County for basically the entire transportation system. We'll see how this goes, and we'll report back to you as it continues. And we're hoping to see a little more effort on our part and on others to involve the general public so that we can get some response to how people see this and how it proceeds, and we'll go from there.
So I think all of the members know that we received a 6-month extension on this from IDOT.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. Ray, would you like to offer anything to Jennifer's statement?
No, I think she covered pretty comprehensively. I think it's still trying to work with the consultants, staff, and also they work closely with the members of the different groups. I think still remaining a challenge is to get everybody's availability to sync up, but that's part of life. And we told the consultants that just when you get the majority of the members to be able to attend, we just have to go for it. Otherwise, we'll just keep delaying the project.
Okay, so let's move on to the final report here by Tim Riley. That's item D under number 6 about the green trails. So Tim, could you give us a report? Could you send me an email on that? I'd be interested. Thank you, Tim.
Tim, this is Carl. I'd be interested as well. Thanks.
Great. That's a good idea. Okay. Well, we're at the end of our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn? It is 5 o'clock. We seldom go this long. So who would like to make a motion to adjourn? Jim?
Sure, I will make the motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second, Carl?
Yep, second.
All right, thank you. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. All right, I don't think there's any opposition. So thank you, everybody.